All right. So where is my other hand? There it is.
Gotta keep track of those things.
Oh, I should actually. If I put this around my hands,
Hang it around your neck or something.
my hands like this.
All right.
Oh, you can thumbs up.
Sweet.
It's actually. Oh God, I moved my monitor. Hello and welcome to a NihongoGamer video. We're here with YazukiWolf. Say hello.
Hello. How is everybody?
You may have noticed that YazukiWolf looks a little different to usual.
Yeah, I forgot. I didn't bring my hat today. So.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah. Do you know what's happening this week?
This week in particular?
Hint. Hint.
Oh. Yes. A lot of VR news.
A lot of VR
happenings.
news
Yep.
and a lot of VR stuff is releasing. Wolf here has been following VR since before VR actually released, then after VR released, and then you actually have developed some games yourself on VR as well.
Personally, I made some demos, and I also did. It wasn't a full-on game, but I did do a game that was put in a presentation at one point.
So the question of this podcast, and by the way, the podcast doesn't really have a name. It's a bit like when Stick Envy first started. We didn't have a name for it.
Right.
The name, I'm thinking the name should be either Nihongo Kitchen or Get Real. Because I feel like one is kind of VR-y, the other one is, I don't know, it's just fun. We could have virtual cooking sessions here in this kitchen.
I don't think the food would be that great here, though.
That is something that I thought
tasty.
about. I thought, wouldn't it be cool to hang out with people and go and eat meals in VR? But
Right.
then you would arrive and you'd be like, well, now what?
And then you'd be trying to find your spoon. Like, is this my spoon? That was my fork.
No,
Got
that's
it.
my mouth. That's my mouse. That's my keyboard. Ouch! The question I want to ask today is 2019 the beginning of mainstream VR? And if not, how will that affect VR gaming?
I mean, that's a lot to just go in a few seconds, but
well, mainstream adoption.
I do think there's a lot of potential, mainly because up until now it's been sort of like an early adopters market, where like people like myself who are willing to spend $1,000, on the actual HTC Vive headset, along with having a graphics card and a actual computer that could run that.
Right.
Those people were into VR now, but a lot of people who weren't willing to do that had a very high barrier to entry, right?
Right. Cost-wise, the headsets that we're using right now cost something like $7 months. So that's like $700, $800.
If I had purchased it in America, buying it in Japan, there's a lot of different fees that come about, so it becomes $1,000 or so, and then upgrading your graphics card is another $100, $200, $250, $300, depending on what you're doing.
Yeah, or if you've got one of these computers that's a few years old, that basically you're better off just starting from fresh, buying a new computer. We're talking at minimum, at minimum, $800 to $900 for a computer that can run at the minimum spec.
Right, plus the $1,000 for the headset, so you're getting close to $2K for that.
And I think what's really difficult for people, I think part of the reason why I think VR hasn't really been mainstream, I would definitely say that VR is not dead at all.
Right.
Like if you go on Steam, clearly it's not dead. There's a lot of stuff happening.
And I just like to say, like, as someone who actually has been kind of following the news for VR, I found it kind of funny and almost comical when I heard people saying, "Oh, VR is dead. It's nothing." and then every day I'm going to work and I'm checking out different things, and every week there's a new VR thing that's happening. And I was if it's for a dead market, it's pretty active, and there's all these like new technology being developed. So
in this day and age with like new iPhones coming out all the time, if a phone doesn't sell 1 trillion copies, it's like pronounced dead. It's like, oh, it's dead. Right. It's like, whoa, wait, they sold like 1 trillion of them and they made a lot of money.
I think it's the post iPhone era, right? Because back in the day, people didn't expect much for iPhone, but then it became like everyone's using iPhone. It was the main thing that everyone needed to have a smartphone, right? And so they're expecting, VRs should happen the same way. It should be like VR comes out and then all of a sudden everyone throws their PlayStations out the window and their like Xboxes are like, no, we're in the virtual world now, but that didn't happen, obviously.
What worries me is that maybe the past 3 years of VR development has actually been investment. And so if the investment doesn't pay off, then will it die? Like we're now paying loads of money out of our pockets because we think VR will catch on mainstream, because let's face it, a lot of even if we like VR the way it is now, if it doesn't catch on mainstream, a lot of the developments we've seen for the past 3 years will start to like disappear, right?
Right. It's like earlier when I was saying it was an early adopter phase, I think from the business end as well, people were looking at it that way. We're like, oh, this is early adopter phase. We're just investing in the future. Well, the future is now. So it's still not panning out and not turning to be like what they were expecting, then the investors are going to be like, okay, this is not early adopter phase anymore. What's going on?
I think that's exactly what it is. It's like it's crunch time now. So it's not really. I feel like it's not exactly like 2019 is the beginning of mainstream VR. It's just that 2019 we're really starting to wonder. Yep. It's like it's crunch time. We've
entered the open beta,
we've finally. And so this is the reason why I have this up on screen. I think even if you and I don't buy something like this, I think this is going to be really important in getting more users in, getting more money in, and seeing more development for stuff that we can continue to play. And the reason is because of that price tag, right? Oh my goodness! That is so annoying.
That is a really interesting laser pointer you got there.
So $399 for the 64 gig model, and $499 for the 128 gig model. Yep, and even with 64 gigs, you can still download pretty much every app on the store because there's only 50. There'll only be 50 apps. I say only. There'll be 50 apps when it releases.
It's basically just like buying a new smartphone at that point.
Yeah, basically.
Maybe even a little cheaper, actually.
Honestly, yeah, I think it will be cheaper. Most people buying iPhones are probably spending something like $700 or $800, and if they're buying the iPhone 10, like $800 or $900 or $1,000. I think it's $1,000 actually.
And not even just the price tag. I mean, I'm sure you're going to go into this a little bit later, but just the convenience of it. Up until now, you had to have a high-end computer to plug it into and have like a setup with lighthouse docks and things in your living room.
Exactly.
But and we'll go into the specs of this later. But a lot of that is not going to be an issue anymore.
So even if you don't understand what the heck we're looking at right here, all you need to know is I think it's going to be quite like a disruptive. Well, I think VR in general is a disruptive technology, but I think this is really going to change the landscape quite a lot because it's cheap and it's easy to set up. Just to explain for anyone who isn't familiar with what we've got on right now, we're actually wearing virtual reality headsets. So Wolf's got his headset on, but you can't see it here because we're in the VR world. I've got the exact same one, and we've got Vive, and we're plugged into PCs. Like this is good. Yep. We're plugged into PCs, and to run VR, you need a PC that's like between $800 to $1,500 to run, and then you need a headset, which is between $650 to about $1,000 to buy the headset. And the headset comes with sensors. So in my real life house, so not right now, what you're seeing right now is we're in big screen. It's just an app. And actually, this is in beta as well, so it's been in beta for 3 years and still hasn't finished. I think it will come out of beta next week when this releases. But in real life, we've actually got sensors. So imagine there's like where that light over there is, I've got a box, and where a light is over there, I've got another box.
Probably over there.
Right, and that's how it knows where my hands are and where my head is. And I think it's the same for you, right?
Oh, yes. I don't know exactly where my sensors are, but yes.
And what you don't see in this video is that we've actually got cables. Like, I'm holding the cable, you can't see it.
Right.
I'm actually got a cable coming out the back of my head here. Yep. And so if I were to play video games, I can spin around and I can play a lot of active games. But at some point, I'll have to reset myself and get my cable back into the right position. And actually, Wolf, you were experimenting with some ways to make the cable not get snagged.
Oh, yeah. There's different setups you can find online where you get like sort of cables and stuff that connect to your ceiling. Oh, yeah. And then you just pull it up, and like it has like different things that will allow some slack. I messed with that a little bit. I found it didn't work too well for me because I still have a very small room, and even if in the ceiling, if I was playing Skyrim or some game with a lot of like swing actions,
well, that's the thing.
Sometimes I would hit the thing that was suspended above me. So
I imagine I was thinking, especially because you play a lot of sword fighting type games, right? Especially when you're reaching back, because you can do that with VR. You can reach back, get the virtual sword out of your backpack, which is so possible.
Or even just like bow and arrow, right? When you're shooting, shooting arrows. I have other friends who swear by it and say that they don't even care about the cable anymore. But for me, it's still an issue.
That's right. And I think that's one of the most important things with VR is that it's different for every single person. So a lot of people will ask, like, does VR make you feel sick? It's like, well, maybe, but that doesn't mean it'll make you feel sick. And in fact, it doesn't actually make me feel sick, but that doesn't mean that you won't feel sick.
There are a couple interesting factors about that, though. One is that you have to have a very good VR setup. Like if you try one of those things at the mall where they just have like some cardboard VR box and they say, here, try VR, and that makes you sick, don't think that that's representative of all VR. A big part of VR is the refresh rate, and if you're playing VR with bad specs, it's going to make you sick a lot easier than a well-spec'd machine.
That's absolutely true, and that's another thing that I want to talk about with this particular device. As we've just explained, the ones that we're wearing have sensors. They come with you need to buy an expensive PC, and it has a cable. This has no cables whatsoever.
Right.
It comes at a low price. I think $400. It's cheaper than a smartphone, so considering what it can do, it's probably well worth it.
Yep.
It's battery powered. The thing that is probably going to be most important about this headset is it offers 6 degrees of freedom, which basically, even probably people who own a VR headset, there are probably people like, what's 6 degrees and what's 3 degrees? I just bought it and it works. There are a number of headsets based on mobile phones with an adapter, or the Oculus Go, which is $200, so really, really cheap, but you can't lean forward like this. And it knows that you've tilted your head up, down, left, right.
It's just your phone's gyroscope is the only information it's taken.
Exactly. But because these new ones, they have a camera 1, 2, 3, 4 on the front of the headset over here, it knows that you've leaned forward. And so if you don't have those cameras, if you lean forward in real life, in the virtual world, you'll just do this.
Yep.
And that disconnect between not leaning forward and thinking you're supposed to lean forward is also one of the major things that makes people lurch and feel kind of sick.
Yep. Anytime your movement in the virtual space doesn't match with what you're expecting in reality, your brain just kind of gets thrown off and you start feeling sick.
That was an excellent textbook definition, YazukiWolf. Gold star. It sounds like you rehearsed that.
I've said it numerous times.
Oh my god. I mean,
I'm hoping to get at least 3 gold stars by the end of the video.
I wish I actually had gold stars. I wish I could pull one out from under the table.
Like, oh, there it is. There you go.
Wolf and I, as you can probably imagine, are nowhere near each other right now. We're in Japan, but we're not in the same building.
It feels like you're right there.
But it feels like you're right there. Even though it looks cartoony, it's like I know that my hands don't actually look like this. But when I'm in VR, it's like I forget.
I actually see your eyes moving, and I know that it can't be real because there's no way for them to actually detect that. But that's an interesting detail that apparently this software has put in to make it feel more natural.
They've really worked on the algorithm, so it's like either following your hand, or it's following the nearest screen, or it's also just doing some random stuff which looks natural. I feel like one other thing that's really important about this headset is that with any technology that gains traction, it usually gains traction by people showing it to other people. And with the headset that I've got on right now, so remember, there's like a $1,500 PC connected to an $800 headset with a lot of setup, with a couple sensors and cables. On top of that, the reason I can't really show it to people is because it doesn't ever work. Now, I realize you're one of the lucky people. Your Vive doesn't tend to break or not work, does it?
No, like I've had very little trouble with it.
Right. It could also be that I'm running on a laptop. But it is
that could be a big factor. I'm on a desktop.
But it is a VR. It is this VR capable laptop, so it's got the right processor. So as a consumer, it says it's got the right processor, it's got the right graphics card, it's got the right operating system. Everything I need to have, according to the box, says that it should work. But when I actually try it, I have to reboot my system about 6 times, and then basically on the 6th time or so, it'll work.
Yep.
It's like, wait a minute. So I don't change anything, but if I just reboot it enough times, it'll work. It's like, that's not a problem you can troubleshoot.
Yeah, and that's my biggest thing about this sort of phase of VR, or this earlier phase of VR, is that was people who are willing to go through the trouble of getting things set up and go through the trouble of having wires coming out of their head and having like things set up in their apartment with like light boxes and things and sensors and all that. Those are the only people that would really get excited about VR. I think that's going to change now.
To continue having more and more games being made, we need to get mainstream adoption on so that more money comes in so that we can play more games on our expensive headsets.
Right.
Basically. Yep. So my big question, at $400 or 50,000 yen, would you buy one of these? Now, considering that you're a user that already has a PC setup.
Right. So that's the kind of tough question, because I am very excited about this, but I would not buy it. At least I don't have any plans on buying it right now. And that's particularly because I am sort of like the early adopter type of person who wants the highest spec stuff possible. And that's why I'm kind of pleased with the way things are going, because we have Oculus coming out with this more kind of not low end. It's still very good quality, but it's inexpensive and a fair quality machine. But then we also have Vive coming out with a new one, which we'll probably talk about later, that has a little bit more high specs. So I like that we still have the high spec market, and then we have a more consumer level market, consumer friendly market. So I wouldn't buy it personally, but I'm glad that it's there.
I'm kind of the same, but I am going to buy it.
Right. So you already actually did your pre-registration, right?
Yes, I've already done a pre-order for this one. Pre-order. One that's $499. Well, I'm paying $500, but you can buy this for $400, and I already own VR. So that's how important I think this is, because I think that by owning it, it will help adoption of the unit if I can bring it places. Because it's wireless, it's battery powered, and it doesn't need a PC running the graphics for it.
Right.
I could literally bring this to my grandma's house, I can bring this to a friend's house, I could bring it to work, and without any sensors to set up. You just put the headset on, you click, look around the room. Once you've looked around the room once, it knows the shape of the room, and then you're good to go. And I think that's why I want to have it. Basically so that I can help adoption of VR. I mean, I feel like it doesn't really need adoption. It doesn't really need help, because either way, VR is here to stay. But I don't want it to like die for another 10 years and then come back in 10 years. I want it to just stay for now.
Right, stay relevant. And I think that's a pretty big factor, because it depends on your personal situation. Like if I, for example, if I could bring it to work and maybe during my lunch break, if I had a large office or a room at work that I can kind of reserve to play some VR during my lunch break, then I would very much consider buying this just because of the portability. It's just that it so happens to be the case that in my particular lifestyle, I don't have any situations where I would imagine taking it anywhere. Like my work is very small and like small cubicles. There's always sharing with other people, like your room spaces. So I can't imagine a place I would bring it to and use it other than just at home. And since I already have a home device, it doesn't work particularly well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like we've got these two different situations where I'm kind of using it also as a YouTube purchase as well. I mean, this is going to be YouTube content as well, and also I can encourage other people to try it out by bringing it places. But in all fairness, you already own a VR headset.
Right. Yeah. I already put one of the investments in there. So.
Right.
And also, I've heard that even though it's portable, I hear that it's not particularly recommended to use outside because the sunlight is a little too intense for the sensors.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So I have seen some articles where news outlets have tried it outside just because you can. But the only it can be a little bit dangerous to go outside. I think in the future we will eventually have headsets that you can take outside. Right now, probably not super recommended, especially because we still use these super powered convex lenses in front of a screen. And if you have a little bit of sunlight on a convex lens, well, you've all done it, where you take a magnifying glass and like a stone outside and you burn the floor with it. Since we've briefly gone over this kind of exciting device, which I think is going to get a lot of people who don't own headsets already interested in VR. What I want to look at now is something that might be more up Wolf's alley. And this is also coming out this year. Has anyone ever told you that? You've got a good alley?
This is the first time, I have to admit.
So tell me about this device. What do you know about it?
I think the biggest selling point for me, although I'm still up in the air about whether I'll buy it or not. Earlier you were talking about how you could just, with the Oculus Quest, you could just kind of set it up. It's self-contained. It has the sensors that just shoot out and tells it what the room is like. This is sort of the opposite of that. It's not self-contained. You still have to plug it into a powered computer, a gaming computer with a good graphics card and everything. Also, it's still using outside sensors. So just a quick terminology. When earlier we were talking about the Oculus Quest and its cameras that were sensing the room around you, that's called inside-out sensors. This is still the old school outside-in, where you have sensors on the outside that are then sending messages into your headset. The other thing is that it has the new Knuckle Controllers, which if any of you have kind of been keeping up with the news with the HTC Vive, they've been developing these for a long time. And what's really cool about those controllers is that they are kind of strapped to your hand. So right now, it looks like my hands are open, but I actually am holding a controller. And in order to like have my thumb move, I have to touch a pad. And in order to have these curl up, I have to kind of squeeze a button. And to point, I have to squeeze a button while touching a pad, which is very awkward. With these Knuckle Controllers, they'll be strapped to your hand, and they have touch sensors. So when you curl your fingers up, it will detect each finger as it's curling, and it will detect your thumb and everything. So it'd be a lot more natural. You could actually let go of the controller completely, and it'd still be attached to your hand.
I think that's going to be a massive difference. The only thing that I'm interested to know about those controllers is that if it's only on this headset, and this is a really expensive headset, who's going to make games for these controllers if it means that a very small percentage of people will be able to buy it and play it? Or
that's a good question.
Will all the games be like playable with the standard controllers and have an index mode?
That's a good question. I mean, it depends on how the developers decide to approach it. I mean, even right now, though, there's a lot of games that are made specifically for the Vive controllers, and the Vive is just as expensive. Well, this one might. Yeah, I think it is about the same price tag,
I think it is
more or less.
The same price, yeah.
Right. It depends on if the market is as it is right now. I'm sure people will still make games for those controllers. If the market changes, however, with the introduction of the Oculus Quest, then it might change. Where like sort of like how the mobile market is right now, with iPhone being kind of the main thing that developers design towards, and they don't really think about other smartphones as much. And so in that case, it might become more of a niche thing.
I think as an enthusiast in VR. And I would definitely say that Wolf is more of an enthusiast in VR than I am, mostly because mine has been broken for the past few years. Every time I try to fix it, it doesn't really work.
That can be a downer.
But as an enthusiast, this is a much more exciting headset because it's got it's like double the refresh, not double, but it's 120 hertz. Normally we're running at 90. So like the two original kings of VR were the Rift and the Vive, and they both ran at 90. But as of 2019, and we're expanding into these all new realms, Vive has gotten with a headset that runs 90 to 120 and sometimes 144, whereas Oculus has made two headsets that run at 80 and 72.
Right.
So even if you buy the newest Oculus headset, the Rift S, it won't run as high a frame rate as the original Rift. So I think that's why people, especially enthusiasts, are especially excited about Valve Index, because it's like, okay, at least somebody is worrying about us AAA AAA experience searchers, explorers.
Right. The main thing that I find interesting about this and kind of makes me very curious is what you're talking about, the higher refresh rates, because I haven't tried it myself, but I've heard from other people who have tried it that the difference between sort of the old school 90 hertz and sort of the 80, 72 that we hear, going from that to 120 to 100, 140 experimental hertz is like being drunk and being sober. It's like the past of VR feels a lot more sluggish once you've tried it in like 120 hertz. So I have to try it myself personally to see if that's true, but that does have my interest peaked.
It's true. We won't know until we've tried it how important it is.
Yep, because that was very much the case before I tried this generation of VR. I tried the original Oculus kits way back in the day, and I was like, I don't know about this VR thing. It kind of makes me feel sick. It's not that great. But then the first time I tried actual kind of consumer, production-ready Vive, it was like, oh crap, this is amazing.
We'll
have to see it when we actually get our hands on it.
Yeah. So by the way, what's happening with me right now is I'm tangled in my cable. I'm trying to get my cable off.
Like, trying to work your hands out.
Yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. I'm very keen to try it, but at the same time, even if I like 90 hertz or 120 hertz, I feel like people are going to be aiming for Quest, which is going to be 72 hertz anyway. So I'm trying to like get myself into the mindset that even 72 hertz is okay, even though what I'm experiencing right now is 90 hertz, which is actually, I think, perfectly reasonable and fine.
And it goes back into what looks to be kind of a coming split in the market, where you have this sort of high end trying to push things as far as they can possibly go, and the side that's trying to keep it accessible and friendly to users.
So this is the thing that most excites me about 2019, is that for the past 3 years we've had two brands. Well, we've had lots of brands, but two main brands. Valve is working with the Vive system, and now the Valve Index coming out, and Oculus has their Rift system. But they were competing like with each other, and you had to choose. Do you buy games on the Oculus store or on the Valve store? If I buy games on Quest, it means I also own them on Oculus Rift, if I were ever to use Rift for PC.
Right.
So it's like cross-buy.
That's pretty nice, actually.
It's pretty nice, but now I have to choose. Since I own a nice VR headset, do I buy it for this on Steam? Or do I buy it on Quest, because I can play it on PC and on Quest?
So if you buy it on Steam, you wouldn't be able to play it on Quest, is that?
That's right.
Oh, don't know if I like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Ideally, I'd like it to be basically like computer software, where no matter what computer you use, you can use the same software. Like, I don't have to get Photoshop for my PC at work, and then another Photoshop for my PC at home. So we have like GOG, which has no DRM. So if you buy a game on GOG, this is not VR, but for the most part, I don't think. But you could buy a game on there and play it anywhere. So I imagine in the future, maybe if VR games start migrating to other platforms, we might see a more open market, but we'll see.
So that's one thing that's going to slightly confuse me. If I own both, which store do I buy it on? That's a little bit of an inconvenience, but overall, it's a gain, because now I just have more places that I can buy stuff and enjoy VR. But the nicest thing I think about 2019 is that we've got this Quest coming out, we've got this Index coming out, and they are completely different markets. So instead of cannibalizing each other, they're actually like, well, now the people who want this premium experience, they just buy this one. And people who want to have a sit down and just buy a couple apps, watch some YouTube videos, and play big screen and chat like this, and just buy the Quest. And it's so also clear which one you're supposed to buy now.
Right, and a quick side note, like, because before it was such an investment to have a big gaming PC to be able to play VR, it was very gaming focused. But now that I think it's more accessible, you don't even have to be hooked up to computers. It opens up the market to non-gaming areas as well, right? So like businesses may invest in getting the Quests to have like business meetings or things like that, you know?
Absolutely. And so actually I've made a quick coffee video touching on this subject before, but now that I know more about it, I have more opinions about it. So on the Quest, there will be 50 titles that come out when it releases. But in fact, I think only about 25 to 30 of them are games.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So actually 20 of them are apps like big screen where we can have a little meeting like this. I can show you my screen. We can talk about something. We can do a podcast like this. Or you can go into VR chat where you just run around and you chat to people. Or you can watch VR videos. Or you can play games. It's exactly as you say. Someone who was more interested in just chatting in VR, $2,000 seems like quite a big overall investment.
Actually, I said I wasn't going to buy it, but actually I might, because I just realized no, because right before we start recording, I was showing my wife the different like places we could go to inside of this app. We were going to like different movie theaters and like outdoor camping areas, and I was showing my wife that, and she's like, "Oh, this is great, but I wish I could be there with you at the same time." So I was like, "Well, I already have my like big old VR headset here, but if I bought a quick $400 Quest for her, now we could both be in the same space in VR at the same time."
That's right. So you could stream a movie on your on your HTC Vive that you're running now, and then you could have your wife come in on the Quest, and you could watch the same movie in a virtual theater. And even if you wanted, you could have like 12 other people in the room if you could have a party. I mean, obviously the eating part is slightly difficult. And I think that's also where Quest is going to be really successful. So even people who own expensive VR headsets like this, even if they don't buy this for themselves, now it's like, oh, now I can get family members involved on what I've been enjoying for so long. But getting it set up is kind of difficult for other people. This is
otherwise,
how
like,
people involved.
It'd be tough to buy a whole nother gaming PC with a whole nother headset just to have your wife watch a movie with you in VR. Right?
Exactly. And I don't even know how the sensor system would work for that. I know that the current system that we're using right now, I know that you can have multiple headsets, but I don't actually know how to set it up.
Right. And even if I had two headsets, I don't know if my computer could handle two at once. So.
That's right. We're still running 90 frames per second on this PC. Right. So the last thing I want to touch on, since all this new hardware is coming out, we've got Quest coming out, we've got the Valve Index coming out, we still have Oculus Go from last year, which is $200, so if people don't need to lean forward, then they can still use that. They can still get into big screen, they can use their Samsung Gear VR. Basically, I think...
I'd recommend the extra $200 though, if you can.
Yeah, just pay the extra $200 and get Quest. What I want to talk about, finally, is the software we're actually going to be running on this stuff. Because, like I mentioned earlier, those 50 titles that are going to ship with the Quest, like, only half of them seem to be games. Right. And the other half seem to be other things. But the ones that are games look like they're pretty much all ports of games that most VR people have already played.
I think I'm cool with it, because I don't think that the people who want the absolute best gaming experience, are like me, are necessarily going to buy the Quest for that. Because we already have the main market is for the Oculus Rift and the Steam VR Vive, right? HTC Vive, I'm sorry, are the main things for gaming. So I don't think the Quest is really part of that, is really competing with that market per se. But for people who are just kind of curious about VR and haven't been able to get into it because of the high price point, it's a good starting step, I think. And also for people that are into things other than games as well.
I think immediately people are going to buy the Quest, and within like 3 months they're going to be like, I might buy a PC so that I can play Skyrim. Or something, because actually Skyrim is the full game, and even though it's not optimized super for VR, it does work. And like you've got all the mods that you've been putting into it to make it even work better.
Quite enjoyable, right? You have many hours of gaming in that.
I think people are definitely going to get the bug from this.
Although, I think that being said, I don't think that the Quest will be a bad experience for gaming as well, either, because the games that are on the Quest are kind of optimized for that sort of headset. And also, I think because of that market, I think that's going to open up a whole new market of gaming where people are going to make games specifically for the Quest now, and it may have its own sort of separate genre or like area of gaming as well that will be cut out in the future.
It's like the arrival of mobile, really, isn't it? I mean, it is a mobile headset. Please don't use this on the train, and please don't run into a public park and set this up. You can, just please don't. This really is like the arrival of mobile, because mobile didn't kill PC gaming. We still have PC games, and we still have console games. It was scary when mobile arrived, because we thought that maybe it was going to replace a lot of stuff. But as you can see, it absolutely hasn't. We've got so many rich AAA console and PC experiences, even though mobile is here, and it's here to stay.
Right. People who want to play like VR Skyrim, they're going to go for the high-end, high-spec headsets probably. And people who just want to kind of have like the fun sort of party experiences, or like the Beat Saber type level of gaming, which is extremely enjoyable, I have to say.
Yeah.
Then Oculus Quest is going to be more than enough for that.
Just before these new headsets were released, we had some rumors about a system coming out called Viveport Infinity.
Now, I haven't heard about this one.
Viveport has already existed. It's a system where you pay like $5.
Yes,
you pay like $5 a month, and then you can choose 5 games to play that month. And then the next month you can choose 5 different games. With Viveport Infinity, it's specifically for people who've got VR headsets like this one. You'll pay the money per month, like Netflix, but it will be unlimited. You can play all the games in the library.
Oh, I see. So not just 5. All right.
Right. And how do you feel about that?
That is a really tough one for me, because I don't know how I feel about the Netflix gaming kind of experiences right now. Like, I think I still like the idea of purchasing a game outright. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to change about the way that games are made if it becomes a Netflix experience. I think Viveport worked well for very short gaming experiences, right? If you wanted to just play a couple hours of one little like VR experience and then go on to the next VR experience, and because you're playing 5 games in a month, right? So you're not going to invest too much time in any one game. That's fine, but I prefer games that are a little bit more beefy and have a little bit more to that one game that you can invest in. Generally, I'm not going to be playing that many VR games at once. I usually play 1 or 2 at a time, so I don't know if I need to have a monthly subscription.
And I think that's why these new headsets are really interesting. With these smaller experiences, because we've got this constraint, we've got to use it on a smaller processor, it's going to be a smaller game. Maybe, because on the Quest the games are smaller, it makes sense to have a subscription service. Now, this is not a subscription service for the Quest, by the way. It's a subscription service for the headset that you and I are using. But as you can see, 1,500 yen. So we're talking like $13 to $15 per month for a system where you could play every VR game on Viveport per month. Even though I think it's kind of exciting because I've got Netflix now and I know what the value of Netflix is, the problem with Netflix is that once there's more than one Netflix, it stops being a good idea. Because now you've got your Netflix account. Yeah, you've got your Netflix account, you've got your iTunes Music account, you've got Amazon Prime, then you've got Viveport, and then by the end of the month, you realize you've spent more money on media than you used to spend in a whole year.
Right.
It's like, wait a minute. It used to be that I would go for a couple months and I would buy a bunch of CDs, and then maybe for a few months I'd get back into gaming and I'd buy some games. But now it's like, we're talking about spending maybe $60 to $70 per month on a bunch of different subscription services.
And I'd say even if you only have one subscription, like even if it only is this $12 a month. For example, if I play maybe 2 games in a month, I don't even know if I even play through 2 games in a month. I may only play through 1 game in a month, maybe. It depends on how much you're playing. But so that 1 game may have cost me like $30 or so. And a lot of times I may return to that game many times in the future. I may play more, like especially with Skyrim, I've played hundreds and hundreds of hours of that. So if you break that down to the monthly cost of that one-time purchase of $30, it's probably going to be a lot less than $15 per month.
Even if a service doesn't exist like this, we still want the freedom of buying games outright.
Yeah, because just like for me, what becomes a dilemma for me is if I have Skyrim VR, and then I also have this subscription, I'm going to feel obligated to play games on that subscription.
Yeah.
But then I already have games that I own that I want to play too. So it just becomes a kind of a weird situation for me where I don't really like subscriptions for that reason. So the only reason why I'm still not 100% saying that I don't like subscriptions 100% is because I feel like the one thing that they might do, which would be good, is dethrone the freemium model as being the best model for gaming. And I think freemium model has done a lot of damage to gaming, in my opinion. And so if it could switch to a point where games don't have to be packed full of in-game purchases and like loot boxes and stuff like that, I can see that possibly being a good thing. Like, obviously, that's not an issue in VR at the moment, so hopefully it will never will be. But that's the only reason why I'm still kind of up in the air.
I'm hoping, because I'm an optimist. Well, I'm usually not an optimist, but today I'm going to be the optimist. I'm hoping that freemium was actually just a very elaborate ploy to get people who don't play games into games. And then we're just going to kill freemium. Yeah, if we just kill freemium, then they'll all just have to join subscription services or just buy games outright.
Yep. I hope you're right. We've talked about sort of the past of VR and the sort of present of VR. Thinking about the future, what would your perfect VR device look like? Tough question.
That's a really tough question.
For me, like, because you were talking a little bit earlier about the wireless option, I really want a headset that doesn't have a wire. I find the wire very annoying. So,
as we can see today, I was kind of just like,
and right now we're sitting, so it's not a big deal. But I find it crazy, like in Skyrim, I have to keep track of how far I've turned this way, so that I know to turn back the other way before I get snagged in the wire. So it's a little bit annoying. So I definitely want wireless. Although on the other side, I don't think I really need it to be self-contained. I don't mind being attached to a computer because I want the highest power possible. I want to have the highest spec headset as I can. The other thing as well is no more screen door. If you haven't used VR before, the image you're seeing right now on the monitor, assuming you're not watching this in VR, is going to be a lot clearer than what we actually see in our headsets.
Probably double. I would say. At least double the resolution of what we're actually seeing. Right now, what I'm looking at, it looks like you've got fishnet tights on your forehead.
Right. Definitely, that's a good description. And that's what it looks like even when you're looking at your monitor, like I'm looking at the notes here, and I have to kind of lean forward to read it sometimes. It looks very pixelated. I don't know if pixelated is the right word, but yeah.
What I will say, though, is that the magic of VR is that, like I was saying, even though I've got cartoony hands, and it looks like we've got fishnets wrapped around our skin, after you spent about 2 minutes in it, you forget about it. Literally, for the past hour, I did not remember. Until you brought it up just now, I completely forgot that the resolution was actually quite low. It's actually high enough that I can read my screen. It's just that you're right. We do have to kind of lean a bit closer to it to see it,
or just make it really big, like it is right here.
Yeah, this is really nice. By the way, if you don't know what this app is, and we've mentioned it earlier in this episode, but Big Screen is currently in beta. It's free. Maybe they'll charge money for it when it finally releases version 1. But it is probably going to be one of the main killer apps. I would say there's 2 killer apps for VR. Right. It's Big Screen and Beat Saber.
Also, VR Chat's kind of on the map as well.
I think VR Chat is absolutely on the map, but I think Big Screen will be the one that starts, because VR Chat, just like AOL in the old days, it's kind of scary. You go into a chat room, you don't know what to expect. But with Big Screen, at least you can start with you and a friend, and then you can move up to like 6 people watching a movie, and then 12 people watching a movie, and then you can go to these public premieres where they're going to have like Hollywood movies showing for the first time.
Yeah, because they're actually talking about having those kind of collaborations where they have premieres for movies in VR, which is going to be really cool. Real quick, since you touched on that, is that another thing I like about this and kind of the future of streaming VR is that I do YouTube content, but I never wanted to do VR content because I didn't want to make content which would make my viewers puke. Usually a good policy to have. And having this camera in virtual space here makes it so much easier to make a real quality VR video, in my opinion, that I think may open up new streamers and new YouTube content that focuses more on VR than it has in the past.
Actually, I was going to move the camera, but I don't want to break it, so I'm going to leave it there. But we could actually... Oh, did you see it? Did you see it?
I didn't see it, but I heard it.
So, if you buy these headsets, you usually set up a Guardian system so that you don't bump into anything. But I'm in sitting down mode, and I just happen to be right next to a wall. It's advised that you're not supposed to do that, but hey, we're pros. We do whatever we want. And I've got a wall right here. This is the funniest thing.
This is the best pantomime you've ever seen.
It's like, oh my god, that is so awesome. Okay, so I absolutely agree with all the things you said. If the question is what is my ideal version of this, it's probably the Microsoft version. I think that my ideal AR, VR, MR headset would be the HoloLens by Microsoft, which is basically just a visor over your face.
Right.
And I'd be able to dim it completely opaque to play VR, and then I could turn the opaque off so it's translucent and see holograms in my real space.
I definitely like that because I think there's newer models. They're having cameras so you can actually see your real space through a camera.
Yeah.
But I don't really like the idea of having to look through a camera to see my room. I think like you're saying where you could just like dim it somehow. I don't know how they would do it, but if I could have it like where I could actually just literally like see my room and then just change it for when I'm doing VR, that would be great.
For the next 3 years, we're gonna have a taste of this because, like you say, they've got these cameras on it. It won't be as good as what we really want. That's really exciting. Oh man, that excites me just thinking about the future of what this is. And what we have right now is this expensive headset and this really very inexpensive. No matter how you look at this, this is cheaper than most. This is cheaper than even some pretty mid-range Android phones.
Yeah, and think about it. If you were going to buy a new gaming console, you'd expect to spend maybe $300 to $400.
Absolutely.
And this is like a new console because it's not attached to a computer. This is a self-contained unit. So it's basically like a portable new VR console, if you could think of it that way.
Honestly, yeah, I think I think those are the two best analogies we've had today, really. It's like it's like a console, and it's also, in terms of market, it's like the mobile for gaming as well.
Yeah.
So something that's doing both. It's the mobile and the console of gaming.
Yeah,
it's like a super powerhouse.
Yeah,
it's a mobile console. Oh my god! Wait, it's the Switch.
Yeah, I think it is in the way that the Switch kind of like changed the game a little bit. You know, it kind of mixed things up a bit. So I think definitely there are parallels to be had.
Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this episode of what's either Nihongo Kitchen or Get Real. Don't know what the name of this show is going to be. This has been YazukiWolf. Do you want to tell them where they can find you?
Just look up YazukiWolf on YouTube. It should come up.
Do you want to tell them briefly what content you usually make?
Well, generally, I make contents in the areas of Japan art and gaming, kind of loosely categorized. So
very related to this, yeah.
Right, yeah. So similar type of stuff. There'll be a link in the description. Yep. I also have another channel for teaching you to speak Japanese. Right now, we're learning hiragana and katakana, so maybe we'll put a link there too as well.
So it's educational too. You'll get a gold. You get a gold star for that.
Yes, I got 2. I almost got to my goal. Dang it. So I don't hear you right now. Are you still on? Okay.
Do you want to know what just happened?
Sure.
That was like such a smooth end to the video. Everything went perfectly well. And what I did was I reached out to give you the gold star. I perfectly pressed the mute switch on my mic, which is right here.
Nice.
Oh my goodness. That was so smooth, and then it just completely fell apart at the end. Brilliant.
Too bad.
The trials and tribulations of VR. Don't forget to check out Wolf's channel, subscribe to this channel, get excited about this quest and the index that are coming out this week and later this year, and we'll see you in another episode. Bye.
Bye.
Oh man, this is the coolest thing in the world.